It's not that deep. Everything love, lust, and life.
Sex. We talk about it so you can get better at it. We can all get better at it and maybe feel a bit happier in the process. It's not that deep. Or is it?
Hi and welcome to our latest episode. We've titled this one Porn Completed It, Mate, which is a little bit of a nod to Jay from The In-Betweeners. My name's Andy. I'm here today with my wife Fran and our friend Rebecca. Now, I'll be honest, I've used porn for a number of decades. As a male, that's probably not uncommon. But I'd be loved to know, from a lady's point of view, what's your take on porn and how often do you look at it, if ever?
Well, I've been so excited to have this conversation because I'd love to be into porn. I'd absolutely love to have a tool that would turn me on. But it's just not for me. I find it hilarious. I think it's the funniest thing ever. Every time I've tried to watch it with a partner, I just end up in fits of giggles. Mainly because, it's been directed by a man who thinks that a woman will be able to enjoy sex standing upright with nothing supporting her back. And that is exactly the way that she's going to orgasm. And she's very comfortable with bare feet on rocks and the side of a cliff face. And honestly, I think it's hilarious. I can't ever take it seriously.
To be fair, we had sex on gravel yesterday, and I left my socks on for that reason. Thick padded socks. So I'm like, he was going, "Are you going to wear shoes?" And I was like, "No, I'm going to be naked." And then I was like, "No, I'm going to wear socks."
It just doesn't factor in real
comfort,
world.
life,
yeah,
reality,
and therefore I cannot watch it thinking, "Yeah, this is real sex," when it's just the worst fake film ever.
I used to not notice that when I was younger, and I used to watch porn whilst having sex with my partner at the time. This is something we used to do, is we would sort of doggy style in front of the TV effectively. And I used to find it used to get me going. But then as I've got older, I found that my inner critic comes out quite a lot of the time. And I'm like, well, that's not fun. I wouldn't enjoy that. Or, that's not that's not interesting to me. Sort of.
Look at the state of that carpet.
Yeah.
Hoover out.
She doesn't look like she's having real fun. That's... you just become really...
Yeah, you're like, hang on, no foreplay there. What's going on here? That's unrealistic. Shall we dry as anything? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Every time I watch these, it drives me mad.
You say that though, but we've had sex in groups with people who've seen other people having sex, and the women make the porn noises, and I'm like, I'm pretty certain I've never made porn noises. And I'm pretty certain that...
The noises you make, it'd be very niche porn.
Heavyweight porn. But I'm pretty certain that they're not noises made of joy. I think they're just noises that people feel like they should make.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a lot of porn, is that people have decided that's what life should be like. And then now that's kind of like life imitating art, almost. Like, we've seen that's what it should be like, so therefore now we do it. But nobody ever really decided that.
Oh my gosh, I can totally relate to that. So the noise thing, I'm a very loud person during sex. It's very primal. Not in like an animal noises way, which would be fine if it was, but it's more I sort of...
Are you a grunter?
No, I just tuned in to the release my body needed energetically, and that was through sound. Because I feel I'm very, very fortunate. I call it a magic vagina. I can have multiple orgasms. Probably why I like sex so much. It's like the best thing ever for me. And it's like so much to deal with. I don't know how to express myself other than with sound. And normally I'm not very particularly a loud person in general. So, but I know the difference between when in past relationships, when I've been like, oh, I know this guy, that I was with, he's not enjoying himself. Let me just fake a few wee porn sounds here and see what happens. I know the difference between that and being actually, oh, this is my real porn sound. This is my sound.
Yeah.
But it's like, oh, I feel like this is the sound I should make. But when you make the sound that you actually make, it's a million times better.
Letting go lets you let go physically.
Yeah, and it's so authentic.
You see, I'm quite quiet. We have to be, though, a lot of the time, because we're either having sex outdoors or we're having sex with kids in the house. So we have to be quite quiet and quite controlled. And I've always been fairly quiet, I think. I don't think even when we didn't have kids, we were particularly noisy.
Yeah, I think we found ourselves in lots of situations where you kind of need to be quiet, and I think that's become naturally our standard now, is that we're not particularly noisy.
No.
To finish the sort of round the table in terms of our experiences of porn, so the title of Completed It, mate, I kind of felt like is actually my story with it. So, starting as a teenager, at the time showing my age here, but as the internet started to actually be a thing, porn became accessible. You maybe store a few photos on a floppy disk at that time. But, it got to the point where throughout sort of my teenage years, my adolescence and into the 20s, it was a staple. It was something that I enjoyed going to. And there wasn't that real critical eye of, is that realistic? Is that something that's people would actually enjoy to do? It was just a case of, it was just a visual trigger.
I think I've just become a middle-aged mum about that.
Yeah, well, I've been middle-aged mum since forever, so.
But then the more time has passed, it's got to the point now where it's the porn that may have excited me back when I was 18 or 19 just doesn't do it for me anymore. And that's where the title of Completed It, mate, came from, because it's almost like the standard stuff and then this and that and that. It sort of gets to the point where it doesn't do it for you anymore.
It's got harder and more niche.
And so it has to be more, not like really hard and niche, but
no.
it gets to the point where it has to be, because there's levels with this.
Yeah, no, I didn't mean.
But it gets to the point where it has to be realistic, it has to be relatable.
Yeah.
Whereas before it could have been a couple of porn stars in LA on a rock face, wearing bare feet on the rocks to upset you, Rebecca. But that would have done it for me. But now it's like, that is so unrelatable to me and my life and my experiences that it doesn't do it.
That's what I mean. Because initially it was like sort of Barbie porn, effectively. Beautiful people having beautiful sex. But now I feel like, no, it's got to be real people. And they've got to be real people in real situations. And there's got to be real risk involved with, are they going to get caught? And I'm like, I watch stuff that I'm quite often outdoors and public-y type things where there's risk in it. And that sort of turns me on.
Yeah.
But it has to be, like I said, like there's an actual risk. I don't like watching porn where you're like, no, you're miles from anyone. You know that there's
You're in
nothing.
a studio with a green screen.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. There's got to be real. And it's got to be something that I could be doing.
Yeah.
That's what I mean about harder and more niche.
Yeah,
like, it's got to be more real.
I have to be able to see myself or us in that scenario.
Yeah.
Then it works for me. Other than that,
I think it's not always vanilla sex as well. I mean, I was always originally just vanilla sex, and now, like, I like watching anal porn. I like watching porn where there's more than one person involved. These are all very boring things, I suppose, for a lot of people. But I find that what I want now is more intense and more real.
I think the one, if you can call it porn, it is porn technically, is sex scenes in films.
Oh, I can't stand them.
Oh no, see, I'm like, that's my thing. If there was a website, if anybody out there wants to start a website of just sex scenes from films,
Pretty certain there will be one.
I'm sure there already is, then I'm there, because I'm like invested in the characters, I'm invested in their story, and it's like, I find it so romantic, like 50 Shades of Grey, and everybody slates it, but I'm like, I'm there. I'm like, this is it. That's peak porn for me.
See, I get that from books, weirdly. For me, I read porno books, don't I, quite often.
Loads of people do.
I never used to when I was younger, but as I've got older, I find that more. I don't know. I used to find it really cringy when I was younger, and yet now I'm maybe it's just an aging thing. That I can imagine it better, I think, maybe, and that I can add my own spin to it and insert myself into that situation better.
Yeah.
Whereas before, I felt reading it like I was watching a film with sex on with my mum or something.
Yeah.
That's how I felt reading a book that had it in. And the same about sex scenes. I just find them really
I think
cringy.
what I struggle with in the porn setup, it's not necessarily whether it's relatable to me, but whether it's relatable to women in general. I think I sat there with my little injustice part-time feminist pretty much, flag for, excuse me, that's not her enjoying sex at all. And that's not, porn is a massive source of education for boys and men, and that is just saying this, just stick a dick in it and it'll be fine. That'll sort the job. But it's so unrealistic and it pisses me off.
The one that gets me is storylines. Not storylines where it's like fake storylines. I quite like fake storylines, even though they're always terribly acted. But I mean, like, there is a schedule for things, She has to do this length of time for a blowjob, and then we have to do a little bit of penetration. Then we have to go back to blowjobs again because we feel like it. Then we have to go back to maybe we're doing anal, we'll do a bit of that. Then we'll go back to blowjobs again, like everyone does want that, And then we'll have to pull out and come on our face because everyone likes that in their life. It just feels to me like totally divorced from what actual real people want.
Yeah. When did women collectively say we like having semen on our face? I'm just.
But also, why would you want to? It just feels like in out, shake it all about, literally.
Yeah.
I mean that's not real sex. So why is that porn?
Porn is made for men.
Yeah. So that I suppose that is the generic porn, isn't it? The boy on girl. That is the sort of the setup that it will follow. You'll do this, then you'll do this, then you'll do this, and then it will land on the middle of your forehead. And that is the thing. I think that where it's interesting, the conversation, porn is such a diverse thing, isn't it? Because it's a name that covers so much. So it would cover where you're saying about film sex scenes, which is like watching Bambi, and it can go all the way to the point where it's much more graphic and it's more like visiting an abattoir. But it's the same, it's still the one name covering it, isn't it? And so there's a lot of niche stuff in there. So, if you are into literally anything,
yeah,
I'm pretty sure it exists somewhere, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's true. And I've certainly found, like I said, my tastes have changed over the time. But also my personal fantasies inform what I look for in porn. I think that happens for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But there's things that I look for and will watch that I wouldn't necessarily do as well, which I think is also gives you a bit of a release for that idea, but without the having to make it reality. Also, just in that maybe making it reality, it's not going to live up to that thing in your head, so you don't want to ruin it for it.
Yeah.
But quite often we come to each other with, have you tried, would you like to try this? And that's a really good way of having a discussion about sex.
Yeah.
Is to bring a porn thing in, especially if it's something that you don't necessarily think the other person might be into, is to bring something in and go, I've seen this. And judging by their reaction, even if they go, oh my God, you can be like, yeah, I know, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or if they're like, oh, okay. And we could be like, well, let's have a discussion about this sort of thing. And I think that's a really good way of introducing things into a relationship.
I've suggested things into our sex life that have become something we enjoy now, that has originated to some degree from seeing porn. Not that I don't know many times I've come to you with, look at this on my phone and can we try this?
We're not sort of out of the blue, like when we're like making toast or something.
Yeah.
It's generally, a bit of a sort of lead up to it.
But there's things where I've seen and then I see that and I get the idea of, well, if we tried that, what would it be like? Or where would we be doing it and what would it be like?
Yeah.
And then we've tried it or talked about it and then tried it and found that actually it's something we've enjoyed. So there's probably quite a lot that has come from porn in our sex life, but not in such an overt degrading sense as such.
Yeah, and I think also it's really good for giving us ideas of things we don't want to do. We look at stuff and we're like, no, actually, that's not for us, which is quite healthy so that you can find that before you get to it as well, so that we don't need to waste time on the things that we're like, nah, not sure about that.
And talking about relatability, you're seeing, from a female perspective, these girls with these really pumped up bodies, and it's absolutely fine that they want to, they can do what they want with their bodies, but it feels really degrading from like I don't like that, I'm never going to be enough if that's what guys are seeing and that's what they want. They want the, huge boobs and huge bum and perfect vagina that I'm just never going to have. And nor do I really aspire for that. But I always kind of, I guess, I feel like women feel, and myself included in that we are set to a standard that we will never be able to achieve. And it sort of maybe underlies the
Bring
whole...
a bit of anxiety in.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, so I'm flat-chested and have had 2 children, so I'm very much not in that bracket either. And I think I probably did have a bit of that kind of thing, especially when we started sort of being a bit more sort of overt sexually, and we go to clubs where we get seen a lot more physically.
Yeah.
My post-baby body sort of became a bit of a concern for me. And I think you have to come to terms with who you are separately to then comparing yourself to someone else. And I think, I don't think porn's healthy in that.
I don't think porn's healthy at all, actually.
Yeah, well, I think it can be healthy if you just look at it as a recipe book, effectively, rather than for things you can do, rather than for something to recreate perfectly. I mean, I don't know if you cook the way I do, but a recipe isn't to be followed perfectly. A recipe is like, oh yeah, we'll do that and we will make something totally and utterly different just from that original recipe. I never follow things. I don't ever do as I'm told.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that porn can be helpful if you don't follow it perfectly and you don't try to recreate exactly what's in the photo.
Yeah.
Effectively.
I think a lot of the insecurity in porn, I think it is, as I know that you're right, a lot of porn is male focused and not necessarily positive at all for women, but I think a lot of the insecurity is the same for men, because I don't have a 12-inch member and a six-pack and a full head of hair and everything else that goes with it, but that is what's probably overly represented in porn, is that men have got massive willies and they've got perfect bodies as well. So it goes both ways.
But also that women want a massive cock. I don't.
No. Oh my God. Painful.
Yeah. And I think that's something we've seen when we've talked to other blokes is, oh yeah, I'm massively endowed. Brilliant. What would you like me to do with that? I'm not interested.
Yeah. And we've got a different range of porn available now. I mean, there's OnlyFans as well, which is a much more unique experience.
And a much more tailored experience as well.
Yeah, which it's different in terms of the exposure level is very different, I think. It's making it crosses the line, and that's maybe where we'll go a bit next, between is porn okay in a relationship when it's OnlyFans and when it's Snapchat porn and when you're actually talking to this person and having conversations with them. Where do we cross the line in a relationship in that sense?
I think a lot of people also, a lot of that porn type thing is supposed to be effectively a relationship, and people feel like they're having a relationship with the person. That's part of the appeal of it. So then I suppose that makes it worse in a relationship.
Yeah.
And whether that's crossing boundaries for people or not.
I think for a lot of people that would be felt as cheating. If you're having conversations and you're asking somebody specifically to do this, can you take a photo of this, a video of that? I think a lot of people would feel betrayed by that.
I think it is a really challenging topic that I think a lot of couples will probably be crossing into now in their partner's needs, in terms of their porn is getting personalised, and it's getting personalised to the point where they've got this secret relationship with somebody who's this beautiful model and all of this kind of stuff, and it's like,
I'm assuming though that everyone on OnlyFans is beautiful, and that's not entirely true. There are a lot of OnlyFans people who are just normal people, and that's their appeal.
But either way, would it not count as cheating if you were in a relationship and somebody was chatting to somebody else and sending pictures to somebody else?
I don't know. We have very different boundaries to the average couple.
Yeah, that is very true. I'm very monogamous, strictly monogamous. So if that was happening in my relationship, it'd be like, bye boy, be gone straight away.
My thought with OnlyFans, though, is that you talk about the personalised porn and that there is potentially an engagement between the two parties to come out with an end product. The other thing with OnlyFans is it makes people accessible as well. So nobody I grew up with, I know of, has an OnlyFans, but you hear loads of analogies and stories of people where it's somebody they went to school with or somebody they grew up with or used to work with has now got an OnlyFans. And again, that's another big boundary, I think, for relationships, is if you're looking at porn of a stranger or you're looking at somebody that your partner used to work with,
next
again,
door neighbour's
that's really
wife or something
different, isn't it?
Yeah. I also think that there is also a positive element in that people who've got quite niche interests or something that they maybe are ashamed to explore with their partner or that their partner's totally not into, then they've got an outlet for that, and that those needs are being met.
Yeah.
And I think that's really positive. I mean, I think that's true with masturbation. You know, that you have to meet those needs, and you shouldn't just rely on that one other person. Even if you're in a relationship, you shouldn't rely on that one other person to meet all of your sexual needs. And maybe that's true with porn as well. You know, that maybe the stimulation needs are something that you don't necessarily have to rely on the other person for. Not saying that they're not important, but just that the sex that you have with them is different than the sex that you want to explore this niche with are.
So what do we think about addiction, porn addiction? I'm quite well versed in this, so I'm ready to get on my soapbox.
I'm aware of it. I've seen things on it, social about it, people who talk about it a lot.
What do you think classifies as addiction? Porn addiction.
In terms of hours per day?
Yeah.
I would assume anything over, in my guess, over 4 or 5 hours a day would.
Wow, so that's quite high for me. That seems.
That's in context. Yeah, that's something. But I think you've got to be talking in terms of at
just
least a
thought I'd
couple of hours a day, because that's quite a chunk of your day, isn't it? To be.
I think an hour is quite a long time. I mean, how long does it take for a guy to have a wank?
Yeah,
Not that long.
well, it can do.
I think it depends. Do you know what I was saying before? That you go around, if you look at porn, if you decide to look at porn with the intention of having a wank, if you can't, I've heard this one. I've in the limited conversation with sex with friends, this is one of the things that has been talked about, which is that sometimes you just have to find just the right video.
Mm-hmm. No, I do get that.
You could sort of keep.
I get that.
You could keep things flowing. You could keep it ticking along, but you almost need to find that perfect video to finish with.
Well, that's kind of like you do that with Netflix, isn't it? You know, you'll sit there whilst we're just watching something whilst we're eating dinner, and you'll go through the whole of dinner trying to find a thing that we want to watch, and then we'll end up not actually watching anything because you've not found the thing you want to watch. And I think that's probably true of porn. I find this quite often. I've got quite particular. I want to watch this thing happening with these kinds of people in this kind of situation. And if I can't find it,
I'll be honest. If you looked at my browser history, if I'm using porn, it would look that I've maybe clicked on 50 videos, but in reality, I've probably just clicked through them 50 just to find the one that I actually like and that works for me.
Yeah, and then you get sort of favourite scenarios that you go back to for as well, I think.
So we'll have a look at some of the statistics, shall we? Porn addiction affects about 5 to 8% of adults. People addicted to porn spend at least 11 to 12 hours per week viewing porn. Many conditions co-occur with porn addiction, including anxiety, depression, sex addiction, social anxiety, and substance use disorders. And about 56% of divorce proceedings cite an obsessive interest in pornographic websites.
56%?
56% of divorce.
That's huge.
Is that in the UK or internationally?
A lot of these was UK, but I'm not particularly sure about that one. I haven't got the...
I'm going to say that's also with a breakdown in relationship, because surely if you're spending that amount of time, then you're not spending that amount of time with the other person. I mean, we spend huge quantities of time together outside of sex.
Yeah.
But if we were spending that much of time, of our sexual time together, that would be all of our sexual time of a week, more than we spend a week having sex.
Yeah.
Honestly, would be solo. So you'd just be taking that completely out of the relationship.
Yeah.
So no wonder.
Porn use for 1 in 5 couples is a source of conflict. A quarter of men reported hiding their pornography use from a partner. A third of women said they worry about how pornography impacts their intimacy with their partner. I think the massive red flag for me is hiding it.
Yeah.
For me, that means that somebody feels like they're cheating. Like somebody said to me once, if you ever have to hide something from your partner, like for it's not your birthday reasons, like there's something not quite right, you know?
It's a breakdown in communication. Yeah. And I think that's more the problem than the porn itself. I think the porn is getting the blame.
It's not feeling comfortable about it.
Yeah.
I mean, would I tell you every time I've looked at porn? No, I wouldn't say, whilst we're eating our cornflakes in the morning, guess what I looked at last night? I wouldn't do that, but likewise, I wouldn't keep it a secret.
We don't share it, but we don't...
It's not a secret.
Well, we don't always share it. Sometimes we do, but we don't keep it a secret.
Yeah.
I think that's the difference.
I think in my eyes, I think porn can be massively can massively desensitize you to actual sex itself. That's
Yeah.
how I feel.
I think that's the absolute key. It can, and I
Yeah.
think if your sexual sort of education is purely based on the formula you talked about before, Fran, of blowjob, bit of penetrative sex, pull it
Yeah.
out and come in a lady's face. If that is your sexual education and your expectation of any partner, then porn's had a negative effect on you, I think.
And according to a survey, that's over 55% of men who said porn this is in the UK, had been their main source of sex education. Only 34% of women said the bulk of their sex education came from adult material, with 50% of female respondents expressing fears that porn dehumanized women, and I'm in that 50%.
Yeah, me too, as well. I've made porn.
Yeah,
I've made porn for you, but I mean, I've made bits for people, and I'm really open about that. But I still think that that's completely what I make is completely different to what's available, and there's an issue with that, because what I'm making is me providing something for someone that I want them to enjoy, and if that's so different to what's freely available, then that's so different to. There's just there's no crossover between, if someone's producing something that's so totally, completely the opposite to what I would produce, then it stands to reason then that that's being produced from someone else's viewpoint, and that viewpoint doesn't gel with me as a person, sexually, and so therefore it can't be a positive. And I think this is something that I got really on my soapbox about the other day, and that I'm quite considering going to the local school actually and talking to sort of teenagers and saying, that this isn't you don't get good sex education at school from your teacher because you don't want to see your teacher in that way. You've grown up with them, you don't want to see them in that way. You need someone who's not in that sort of sphere to go in and say, you know what, this is what girls really want, sort of thing. And as an adult, this is what you need to be looking for and looking at, and that this is where porn is going wrong. Yeah. Because I watched a documentary ages ago where it was talking to sort of 16-year-old lads and girls who were having sex, and they were saying, do you want to come on her face? And all the boys were like, yeah. And all the girls were like, well, we'll let them do it because that's what's expected of us. Yeah. But none of us like it.
It's not an enjoyable experience.
But that's the thing. If you're then injecting that into... that is what sex is, then that's what girls are expected to do, and they are automatically having a negative experience of sex from early on, and they're trained, and those are the women who are not going to want to have sex once they become adults, and it becomes harder and less fun, I suppose. When you've got kids around and stuff, and you're not so hormonally driven, you're not going to want to have sex if your idea is that, oh, well, it's just going to do things that I don't particularly want anyway. So get it started early young, that kids need to know, teenagers need to know how to have good sex so that they can start having better sex earlier.
It's like there was a TikTok video I saw the other day, which was like snippets of advice from women to men about how to make sex better. And they all said, like, stop with the DJ, like the DJ on the clit thing, where they just like absolutely go ham on the clit. And it's like, you're just sitting there like, what is going on? And it's because there's no education of that except from porn. Porn says, do that, it'll work.
And it's a visual thing, isn't it, as well? So that for you to be able to see what's going on visually, it's got to be quite physically active.
I think that makes you so disconnected from the reality of an actual sexual relationship when you're not tuned in. How is this person responding? I've spent entire moments like if I'm quiet in sex, I'm not enjoying it because I'm a very loud sexual person, and I will go through the whole thing of sex, and whoever I'm with sexually won't have picked up on it because they've got this plan going ahead, and this is what I'm going to do next. I'm focusing on me being hard, this, that, and the other, whereas I'm there like clearly not enjoying myself, don't want to say anything because I'm like, oh, they're enjoying themselves, don't want to ruin it for them.
Following a screenplay sort of thing.
Absolutely. And if they were tuned in enough to not think about all the other stuff they should be doing and how they should be feeling and what they should be experiencing, then they'd be like connecting to their partner more and being like, what can I do to bring this person out of that. You know,
That's what I mean. Porn trains us into this is a story that we have to follow, and we have set targets that we've got to hit along that story.
Yeah.
And I think that's putting pressure on both partners that doesn't need to be there. I mean, he doesn't have to keep that moving along like that, and she doesn't have to be down with the things that are in the video. Why don't we actually? No, you both need to be into whatever it is that you're going for, and it doesn't have to follow that storyline, and it doesn't have to end in the way that you think that it does in all porn. You know, there doesn't have to be a physical end to it. It can just sort of be an experience in itself.
Yeah. So I've got a couple more stats for you guys. Around 35% of all internet downloads are pornographic. 40 million US adults regularly visit internet pornography websites. And this is slightly different to the other stat. 10% of US adults admit to having an addiction to internet pornography, whereas I think the UK stat was 5 to 8%. Although whether you'd ever find out the actual, truth of the extent of that, I don't know, really.
Well, especially if, I'm quoting 4 hours would be an addiction wrongly. And maybe the numbers are out.
Yeah, it's exactly that. 17% of all women struggle with porn addiction, which is really interesting. And that's a US survey. 20% of men and 13% of women admit to accessing porn while at work. That blows my mind.
Yep, I've done that. I had a whole period where I used to work for an industry. It was in the building industry, and it shuts down for 2 weeks. But they used to have someone had to stay in the office for those 2 weeks, so I'd be the only person in the office. So I was like, well, what else am I going to do? I would just read books and masturbate. And also we overlooked a fireman's training ground. So I was like, well, what else? I've literally got it on tap.
Brilliant. Thanks for that honesty there, friend.
But yeah, so I've done that. But I think that's something, I think I'm quite a sexual person, and I think that's just something that those boundaries aren't such big boundaries to me.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably one of those, but also boredom.
Yeah.
And I think, again, it's that sort of sex to self-medicate the way you're feeling. I think most people don't feel all that amazing at work, and sex makes you feel better.
See, I get, my level of arousal is way too, if I was ever in that situation, it just would not be practical. I just couldn't function. I'm too sensitive to be in that situation. I just wouldn't be able to.
You can't switch it off again.
No. It would just be intolerable for me to exist in that state.
Yeah, so I think I'm quite good at compartmentalising when it comes to sex.
70% of women admit to keep their cyber activity secret. That's really interesting. So women who watch porn obviously don't want to talk about it. Don't want to say that they watch porn.
I think they tend to be less into talking about porn in general.
Yeah. I was surprised. I was genuinely surprised when you told me that you use porn. Not shocked, but I was like, I had no idea. And then I remember when you first told me that, going back quite a number of years now, but I remember when you first told me, I was like, what do you watch? I was really interested to know. And it was the complete opposite. I remember that conversation. It was the complete opposite of our sex and scenarios. And I was like, I think I could be quite damaging or concerning for people in a relationship, but I was quite excited by it.
Are you not happy with what we do, sort of thing? Yeah, but it's not about that. It's escapism. In the same way that watching films and reading books is escapism. I read books to get out from my life, and I read trash for that reason.
Yeah.
And the same thing with porn. It's chewing gum for the brain, isn't it? Stuff that just lets you switch off from your life. So I don't want it to match our sex life. But yeah, I suppose I am. I'm quite open about sex, and I'm not that open about what porn I watch and what I like. And we've gone through porn to find things that I like. And yeah, I found that less. I'm so open about everything else, and that actually naturally I am less open about that.
So I'm quite open to talk about the fact that I will look at porn. I'm comfortable knowing that you do, but the few times we've tried to look at it together, I just find it really frustrating. and we just give up very quickly.
We
And
don't
I don't think
blend,
we'd
do
try
we?
again.
We don't match what we like to watch at all. It just doesn't gel,
Yeah.
which is weird because we gel sexually fine, but we don't gel in what we like to watch.
I'd say we gel sexually more than fine. But, but yeah, I agree. The thought of watching porn just doesn't
No.
do it for me.
But then the porn of us together, effectively,
Yeah, I don't mind watching that.
then that we will watch that together
Yeah.
whilst having sex or before to get us in the mood.
Yeah.
Then we will do that. But then, yeah, manufactured porn we don't watch
So I'm
together.
curious, Tony, so you are not a porn fan, it's safe to say. Have you ever had partners that are really keen to watch it with you or to try and
Yeah. So
get you to watch it?
weirdly, I get really turned on by knowing my partner watches porn. It's completely the opposite of how I feel about it. It's like, so if I'm like constantly,
Do as I say, not as I do.
if I've been away or if they've been away, I'll be like, did you masturbate? Did you have a wank? What did you watch? And I'll be like, that will turn me on. It's so weird. It is called something. So it's some kind of weird kink I've got, obviously. I really like love it. I love to know about it, and luckily I've got a partner who will share that with me. But in a previous relationship, I was with an addict who didn't communicate it with me, but just I found out through the other sources he was getting his porn from, unfortunately, and that was where it was crossing the line. And when it's personalised, as I call it, and when it's somebody on the other side of that communicating back to you, and you're sending them pictures but not me, that's where for me I'm like, what's going on here? But if it's like general, just in a relationship, sort of escapism, need, and all of that kind of stuff, it's fine. I think I would have a level if my partner was sort of at it every day. I'd have an issue. I'd be like, I'm right here. I'm I'm hypersexual. Like I'm right here. Then that would, I think, be a problem for me. But the frequency that it isn't, and I want to know about it, and I get excited by that.
I think that's kind of voyeurism, isn't it?
Probably, yeah.
But from a slightly different angle.
Weird, like
It's not weird.
no,
I think
it's like
just,
like those windows within windows. Like I'm the voyeurism outside of the voyeurism.
But again, I think it's also
I like other people, watching other people get turned on by watching other people having sex.
that's really common, really, really common. Well, we've been on the other end of that, so and it's nice. It's nice to be on the other end, actually, knowing that other people are getting turned on watching you have sex.
Yeah.
And so I think it's sort of self-fulfilling sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I think the voyeurism side of it, you want to sort of know what they're masturbating to is also bringing you closer to them as well.
Yeah. Oh my God, so much. And it's in relationships, honesty is it. Like that is all I really need. Like the key thing in my relationship is honesty. And if somebody's being honest about the intimate parts of themselves, that is such a sort of message of love to me. They're willing to share with me what turns them on sexually. Like they think, oh, I need to say it's her. Fuck that, I don't care. Like I know I get turned on by other things. You get turned on by other things. That's very normal. Like I don't think about him every time I masturbate. I have this whole loads of little scenarios in my head that just join whenever I fancy them, and they're wild. And like you said earlier, it's stuff that I'd probably never put into practice in real life, because I don't think I feel comfortable with that actually at all. But in my head, I'm like, oh yeah, that sounds wicked.
Also, not just feeling comfortable about it, the reality sets in, doesn't it? Suddenly you are standing on the rocks and your feet are hurting, and you're like, no,
Yeah.
this actually sucks,
Yeah.
And there's a few things that we've done. I'm like, this position is going to be so hot, and then we get to it, and we're like, oh my God, this does not work at all.
Abort.
we are too fat for this. This just doesn't work. That kind of thing. Apparently, you have to be a size 0 to do this position, or that kind of thing.
Yeah.
There's a few of those that we've tried. Those TikToks where you see there's sort of fit people lift each other up in these sort of stupid positions, and then you get sort of people our sort of size doing it. We've done those sorts of things both sexually and non-sexually, where we effectively body slam each other because it's just not, we're like, let's try this move, bang, no, let's not. And I think that's where porn is quite handy, to give you ideas, but also potentially damaging, in that you think that you might be able to do a lot more than you physically can, but also that you think that you should be doing things that you might not physically you might not physically need to do. You know, they might not actually feel that good. They look great. I mean, that's like Instagram.
Yeah.
Looks great a lot of the time, but the reality behind it is generally that everything's nowhere near as rosy as it looks.
Yeah.
I think in a relationship, I think what's coming through for me is that if you use porn, either of you or both of you together, you've got to do it responsibly, because there'll always be people that enjoy it, people that don't, people that like the concepts of their partner doing it and some that don't. And there'll be people that want to take things that they've seen in porn and try it with their partners, whether it's something they want to do or not. And I think if you're responsible about it, I think it's definitely got a positive place. Because I can say from experience, I think it's had positive impact upon our sex life and what we do. But I can easily see how it can go the opposite way.
Yeah, and I think responsibility needs to be communicated within the couple as well. Like, definitely that was something that I had a conversation with my partner when we first got together. This is my boundaries, like micro cheating, which is what my ex called it in the past relationship. That's not okay here. It's not cool. I don't care if she's a porn star and she's not going to reply. It's not okay that you send dick pics to her. And you know, setting, this is where I stand on it, this is where you stand on it, and finding out your sort of okay levels and being able to compromise in that sense, I think at the start of a relationship, I think is really healthy. And just like a different type of porn, 1 in 3 visitors of all adult websites is women, and women favour chat rooms 2 times more than men. So by chat rooms, like, I don't know what chat room they're referring to. It just makes me think of Reddit. So I recently joined Reddit, and I get so many messages from like horny men, and I'm not on there for horny men reasons. But obviously I think it's I don't know if you've used Reddit, but it's like massive anonymity. Like, nobody knows who you are. It's completely got some weird, like, your username is usually like a food or a verb or something. It's completely like random, and there's totally anonymous. So I can get where people get off from that, and they can write like entire stories of like sex scenarios that may or may not even be real, and then other people comment, like, and it's just fascinating, like, just incredible that these kind of worlds exist. I love learning stuff like that, but I can see where women might favour that, just from a sense of, no one knows I'm here.
Safety.
Yeah.
Almost, yeah. So I was quite disappointed in life in that I didn't get sent dick pics much as a kid. Not a kid, that sounds awful. No, as a younger, as a teenager and sort of in my 20s or so, I didn't really get sent dick pics. And I was like, is there a problem with me? But now we go onto sites as couples, we get absolutely bombarded with them.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, oh, brilliant. Now I don't really know I just want it to stop. So,
do you know what? I think that's a good point, and I think that is maybe the influence of porn is that, we're on some sites and you'll get single men will message us as a couple, and it is literally just, here's a picture of my dick. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Delete. Thank you.
That's not a conversation. It's not a conversation starter or end.
No.
To be honest, there is no conversation in there, and you'll just get like a small sentence like, "Yeah, how you doing? Here's my dick." Literally.
The thing is, it's sales, isn't it? Sex is sales. You have to sell yourself. You have to sell what you've got and what you can do for that person. And if you literally just thrust your product in front of somebody and don't give any explanation of what it does or how it can be good for you, how is that person ever going to want to
like a
purchase?
CV, isn't it? I mean, just think of your dick pic as a CV.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't just send a photograph to a company and go, "Here's a picture of me, employ me." Same thing.
Especially not with your penis.
Yeah, well, yeah, no, that's probably going to get you into some serious trouble. But same thing here is that, that's just a part of your body. It's got no bearing on anything, really. I mean, it's got bearing on the physical aspect of sex, but none of the important bits of sex are actually revolving about the way your penis looks.
No, and it's like slightly going off on a different topic, but it's like, breasts are for breastfeeding. That's their purpose. It's the mind and social sort of society that's actually made it sexualized. And it's just the same with
the nipples on Instagram. Yeah.
Yeah, you can show nipples on Instagram if you're breastfeeding, but not if you're not.
Yeah. and like nipples are like the devil's
Ugh.
thing. I was like, what is that about?
Yeah, so that's like slightly on that, but yeah, and also ought to say to our listeners that it's now illegal to send unsolicited pictures of genitals in the UK. Yeah, so quite genuinely illegal. So
it should.
yeah, so I think we've covered everything we've got today. It's been a really interesting conversation. I was really looking forward to this. So thank you so much for listening. Please do leave us reviews and likes and check us out on social media. We'd love to see you there.
Sex.
It's not that deep.